Welcome to the third video in this series about pigment experiments, and today I have Cobalt Violet. It's a PV14 and my tube is from Winsor & Newton. It's a series 4 pigment and it's silver. It's very reflective. I have just a small one. This is not one of my favorite colors, but it's very pretty. If you know Irit on YouTube, she is a watercolor artist. She does all sorts of other crafts, but she is the one that kind of talked me into trying out this color. I used to follow her before she even started watercolor, when she did a lot of scrapbook and memory keeping, and then she transitioned to watercolor. And she mentioned on her channel this particular pigment being her favorite hue of this violet. I know there's other brands that carry the PV14. I don't have it from the Sennelier. I don't know if it was discontinued at some point. I know we have Cobalt Hues and Cobalt Violet Deep, but none of them contain this pigment, the PV14. And you can see it's a very light value. You cannot get deep colors. And I scrubbed my little dot blob of paint that I squeezed from my tube. And this particular paint from Winsor & Newton tends to get really dry, hardened on a palette, and it can be harder to re-wet, but to a certain extent I believe this is the nature of the pigment. You could probably add solvent or in watercolor glycerin or oxgal, but so far just some water, and for what I needed, I feel like this this particular pigment works well. Again, I'm trying my hand at getting all the values for this pigment. This is not my strong suit. It's something that I'm still in pursuing of figuring out, controlling the value of my paint, and getting it to a point where I don't get it too dark too soon. When it comes to movement in water, I notice most granulating pigments tend to move a little slower. This one has an interesting reaction. I do have a watered down version on my palette, and yeah, it's not too bad. I think we'll let it dry, see how far it travels. Liftability, if it's just one pigment that's granulating, most of the time it can be easily lifted. And this violet color, it's very light, but we'd let this little swatch dry and we'll give it a try. Let me know how you practice your value studies, if you have a particular pigment you use, and how do you control that in your painting? I feel like my paintings are getting darker too fast, just because I like the deep contrast and I lose my light values. With layering watercolor, we know Sennelier, it's known for being one of those formulations that looks great. If there's a layered applying, we let it dry and you keep reapplying until you get the desired intensity. I probably should try that with some of their pigments. I'm not sure if all of them are good or perform well. The ones we've seen in the PV16 experiment in the previous video, they seemed they were not the best. Also, what I've noticed, possibly the paper. will have something to do with the ability of creating layers and layers of paint. And then different techniques, whichever you prefer or whichever you find easy to use. My favorite is to create these smooth gradients, apply a very concentrated paint at the top of my shape, and then just water it down slowly to get to a lighter value. When it comes to the description for this paint in the Winsor & Newton website, they describe it as a delicate, semi-transparent purple pigment. And granulation says, yes, it's granulating and very light fast. It's also a toxic color, so if you have any restrictions or you want to avoid toxicity, then just keep in mind about this color, the property. I will let this dry for a little bit and I'll try to layer it. I'm actually surprised with just putting a lot of water on my mixing tray and let the color soak a little bit, like so, and painting just with this colored water. I was able to get quite a smooth layer of color, but you see, as the paint dries and when it has a lot of water, it starts to granulate, which is a very pretty effect. This is probably one of my favorites, and you probably see my older videos where I use this to create different mixes. But yeah, let's give it a second to dry and I'll be back and we'll finish this part of our colored experiment. Their swatches are almost dry. I tried to put another layer on top of the previous one, and although it's still drying, I would say it's somewhat successful. And for the value, yes, this color cannot get very dark, which is, it's fine. As for the lifting abilities, remember this is cellulose paper. This pigment should be relatively easy to lift just because of its nature, the granulation. Most paints that are granulating, from my experience, are not staining. So yeah, almost to the white of the paper. There you have it. Also more movement than I thought it would be. Easy lift, layers, somewhat successful, maybe on a different paper. The gradient, I was actually surprised, although at first it seemed like it would be a mess. It turned out nice and even, and the particle of the purple paint settling in the texture of the paper. As for opacity, we can see on the black line some of the particles, violet particles, which is expected for this color. And since Irit, favorite thing to paint, or at least the videos I like the most from her, a collection of videos on YouTube, are abstract florals. I'm gonna try my hand on it. It's kind of difficult because you have to have a clear idea of the designing of your art and the color scheme, but I am just gonna give it a hand at it and see what comes out of it. I don't have much expectation, and I was even debating if I should film it, but she made it look so easy, and I know abstracts, they look easier than they are in reality. Let me know what you think about abstract watercolor. this is the final result of my play with my star color, which is the Cobalt Violet from Winsor & Newton. And I'm using a new phone with a new camera, so we'll see how this recording is gonna go. But I couldn't wait to test it out. I just wanted to show you this result. And if you haven't tried abstract florals, I would recommend to give it a try. This was a lot of fun to do. Definitely watch a few of Irit's videos. She seems like she has a lot of fun painting this, and I did also. I use other colors of my palettes, Opera Rose, Opera Pink from Daniel Smith, a few violets, Moon Glow, and some Undersea Green, and some yellow here and there. And I was inspired by this color so much that I wanted to try it, and I did another one. This one I used watercolor paper from Michaels. This is a cellulose paper, this previous one. This is an Arches, the hot press, which has a very fine texture. This is Michaels, has a similar textures as the Arches hot press, but it's a cellulose paper. And the main difference, like from a distance, you cannot even see much of a result. Everything, it seems about the same. The colors are quite vibrant. The only thing I would say, you can see right here in this close-up, because the water sits on top of the paper longer, the granulating colors have even more of a spectacular effect. So I remember particularly this spot, my water was just staying on top and the pigment had a chance to move. But overall, quite interesting effects. You can see even here with this separating Moon Glow, you got more separation again because the water tends to stay on top of the paper and the pigment move about. Similar here with this violet color running into my Moon Glow leaf. And of course I had to give it a try on my tried and true Arches cold press. The violet has a very even granulation all throughout the application. One mistake I did, I tried to apply the color and the paper was still damp, so I didn't get the nice edge I wanted. And the overall feel of the painting on this more texture paper, it's a more soft effect, but only if you look really, really close. But these are my experiments with this beautiful Cobalt Violet. I would definitely recommend to give it a try, even if you buy just a small tube. Very interesting color, because of its granulation. It would mix well to create other granulating, separating colors. But that's it for right now. See you in my next video.